Although it's said that all wounds heal with time, I've discovered that certain scars bury themselves so deeply that they become a part of who you are. As I stood outside my Manhattan apartment's floor-to-ceiling window, I could see the city bustling below, its lights flickering like stars stuck between concrete and glass. I held the wedding invitation in my fingers, a clean ivory card with my name etched in gold. It was my wedding invitation. It ought to have been the most joyful time of my life. But the weight of all that had led me here was all I could feel. I was left alone with the demons of my past. When my fiancé, Jacob, left on a late call with a client, I'm Emily Carter, and I was invisible for the majority of my existence. My sister Ashley was the center of our family's universe. Louder, prettier, 10 months older, her smile could brighten any space. I was the moon, silent and far away, always circling near enough to feel her warmth, but never quite close enough to shine by myself. In our family, love was something you had to earn, and Ashley did it with ease. I learned this early on. Our parents organized a trip to Disneyland when I was 7 years old. My heart was already pounding at the prospect of meeting princesses and going on roller coasters when I heard them discussing it in the kitchen. Grinning, I dashed inside the room. I am very excited. What time do we depart? My mother stirred her coffee and hardly looked at me. Oh, no, dear. Ashley is the only person on this trip. My father's voice sliced through me like ice, and I can still remember it. Ashley needs special consideration, particular attention. Every birthday, every holiday, and every broken expectation was accompanied by that statement. My grandmother used to explain my existence in a kind manner when no one believed I was listening, and I was the surprise gift. Ashley was prearranged. They wanted Ashley. Ashley was unique. Those words are still stuck in the back of my head like dust, even at 42. I made an effort to win their affection in the only way I knew how, which was by silent obedience and flawless grades. I buried myself in books while Ashley was dazzling at dance performances. I stayed at home and assisted Grandma Martha with crossword puzzles and laundry folding when she sneaked out to parties. Grandma used to whisper, "You're special too," when no one else was there. I could still hear what she wasn't saying, though. You are unique, simply not how they desired. The rivalry had devolved into something more repulsive by high school. I began to win math contests, which were little triumphs that meant a lot to me, but Ashley would always make fun of it whenever I brought home a trophy. Oh, look. The little genius thinks she's Einstein. My parents have never stood up for me. They appeared embarrassed by my accomplishment, if anything, as if my brilliance were some awful oddity they had to put up with. My father used to remark, "Don't cause trouble with unnecessary actions," whenever I attempted to push myself. Ashley was the first option every time. The backup plan was me. I'm not sure when the fury began to simmer beneath my skin, but I kept it with me for years, tucked away under the flawless report cards and courteous smiles, securely wrapped. My life was devoted to demonstrating my deservingness of their affection, until I came to the realization that I didn't require it. In my palms, the invitation weighed heavily. Before hitting submit, I had at least 10 revisions to the message. I'm getting married next month. Ashley, Dad, and Mom. If you would like, you are welcome to come. No pretentious justifications. I'm not sorry. Just a door that was open for them to enter, if they so desired. When the response did arrive, it was just what I had anticipated. Congratulations. Your father should walk you down the aisle. There was no question. It wasn't even fortunate. It was a demand, as if they still felt entitled to the aspects of me that they had consistently disregarded. That evening, Jacob discovered me sitting by the window, the message still shining on my screen. He crouched next to me and tucked a flyaway hair behind my ear. "You don't have to invite them, Emily." However, he failed to comprehend. I wanted them there, but I wasn't inviting them. Some tiny, shattered part of me still needed to know if they would turn up, so I was inviting them. I no longer desired their affection. All I wanted to know was if they could give it at all. Before I could reconsider, I hit submit. Jacob's arm was around me as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while memories fought their way out of the shadows. That summer, they abandoned me. Ashley sneaked out the window while I sobbed into my pillow. She split my head open, and they defended her in the antiseptic, chilly hospital room. I questioned whether they would even recall. I pondered whether they had ever been disturbed by the daughter they left behind in their pursuit of the golden one. I promised myself as I closed my eyes. I'd let them back in if they did choose me after all. However, if they did not, without them, I would go down the aisle and never turn around. After I sent the invitation, the days flew by in an odd haze, each one more burdensome than the one before. I don't care if they show up, I told myself. I said a falsehood. My heart would jump whenever my phone buzzed, only to fall when it was a message from the florist or a delivery confirmation. I read my mother's text over and over again, learning every icy word by heart. Your father should walk you down the aisle. No, we wish we could be there. No, you have my admiration. Only acclaim. As if they still believed they had the right to dominate my life after years of shoving me to the periphery. Jacob attempted to divert my attention with late-night takeout on the couch and weekend excursions to vintage markets, but he could see how I winced whenever my phone rang. He didn't push. At night, he seemed to sense the battle raging beneath my skin and pulled me a bit closer. I eventually received the news I had been dreading a week prior to the wedding. Ashley sent it. Getting married before your older sister? Classic. Always trying to make everything about you. The old, familiar ache curled up in my chest as I gazed at the TV. I wasn't even shocked by it. Ashley had always been adept at manipulating the situation. In the back of my mind, I could still hear her voice sharp as glass when our parents weren't around, sweet and syrupy when they were. You're the weird one, Emily. Why would anyone want to be friends with you? No one likes a show-off. Those memories were still raw beneath the surface, even though I had thought I had buried them long ago. Before I could press send, I erased every one of the 6 responses I had typed down. Ultimately, I simply wrote, "You're welcome to come." How much I still wanted her, there was the part that hurt the most, despite anything. I kept the message a secret from Jacob. Every time Ashley's name was spoken, I could see his silent animosity for her brewing beneath the surface. You don't owe them anything, Emily. By now, he had said it 100 times. However, he didn't realize no one did, actually, that some scars don't go away simply by walking away. In solitude, certain wounds hurt more. I woke up in the dark the night before the wedding and stared at the ceiling. Like a movie reel, my thoughts flipped through all the possible tomorrows, attempting to visualize Ashley sitting rigidly in the back row and my father waiting at the end of the aisle. Or perhaps neither of them will appear at all. I hoped that they would arrive. Maybe, just maybe, this was the time they would finally pick me, I longed to think. However, I already knew the truth in my heart. Cruelly gorgeous, the wedding morning broke clean and bright. Wrapped in ivory silk and sporting flowers weaved through my hair, I hardly recognized myself in the mirror. My grandmother's eyes were glossy with pride as she stood in the corner of the bridal room, holding a handkerchief to her chest. "You look beautiful, Emily." As she put ribbons in my hair, I briefly felt like a small girl again, standing in front of her former vanity. She'd always seen me, as long as no one else did. I muttered, "Are they coming?" and cursed myself for having to ask. Grandma's eyes darted to the door as if she could will them there, and her grin wavered. "We'll see." However, we both understood what that meant. I was shaking beneath my skin by the time the ceremony began, making myself smile for pictures and holding Jacob's hand too firmly. My heart lurched each time the door creaked open, only for faraway friends and strangers to enter, their faces glowing with borrowed joy. Not them. I took one last look around the audience as the music finally began, and Grandpa George took my arm to lead me down the aisle. I have no idea what I had hoped for. A last-minute miracle, perhaps. Perhaps a little evidence that I had actually mattered to them. However, there were no seats where they should have been. They hadn't arrived. I continued to walk. With my grandfather's calm hand encircling my own, I gradually emerged from their shadow and entered the life I had created for myself. I could hardly feel the pain anymore by the time I got to Jacob at the altar. I had made it thus far without them. I could live forever without them. I grinned for the cameras during the reception. I performed a dance. Jacob spun me around the packed floor until I was laughing so hard my cheeks hurt. The skyline stretched out in dazzling lines below me when I sneaked away to the balcony late into the night. After the guests had left and the music had subsided to a gentle hum, I noticed her at that point. Ashley, standing at the garden's edge, somewhat concealed by the shadows, she observed from afar. How long she has been there is unknown to me. I felt like calling out to her. A part of me wanted to turn away and act as though I had never seen her. Ultimately, I simply waited to see what she would do while holding on to the chilly iron railing. She didn't move. Arms crossed, her face pale in the flickering lights. She simply stood there in her fancy dress. For a single long, panting minute. She might actually come inside, I thought. Then, as if she had come solely to confirm that I had seen her first, she turned and vanished into the night. I crept back into the reception area, and Jacob was waiting for me by the window, frowning. "Are you okay?" I pressed my head against his chest and nodded gently. "I think I finally understand." "Understand what?" "Some people would rather haunt you than love you." He encircled me with his arms, drawing me in till the pain subsided and was replaced by a calmer atmosphere. On that night, I didn't cry. I was no longer even angry. I simply sensed free. In the morning, I blocked all the numbers. My entire family was just another ghost in the rearview mirror by the time we departed for our honeymoon. They had made me feel insignificant all my life. They would never have the opportunity to see my ascent. When we arrived in Santorini, I didn't cry. Maybe I would, I reasoned, thinking that once the water opened up beneath me and the sun warmed my skin, the weight of everything would finally sink in. However, the tears did not fall. Rather, there was quiet. My chest began to ache and feel heavy, like if my body was still waiting for something. A last blow. Jacob was wise enough not to inquire about my well-being. He simply held my hand while he made slow circles with his thumb against my palm as we strolled through tiny alleyways full of whitewashed buildings. I didn't let him know that I had been looking through unanswered texts on my phone every night before he went to sleep. Don't apologize. No justification. Not even congrats. They hadn't simply been absent at my wedding. I had been totally wiped by them. Ashley's number was blocked by the first cut. One night, as the water was black and infinite under the moonlight, I did it while sitting on the hotel balcony. For a while, my thumb lingered over the screen, my heart racing as if there was still a part of me that thought she would reach out if I waited long enough. However, I was aware. It had always been Ashley who left first. I stared at the phone as if it might somehow reverse itself after pressing block and placing it face down on the table. It didn't. 2 weeks later, back in New York, the next cut was made. While Jacob was unpacking our bags, I sat at the kitchen table and browsed social media as if I was looking for evidence that they had missed me. Ashley's page was still filled with selfies from her vacation, including rooftop parties with string lights and drink glasses clinking. The wedding was not mentioned at all. I seemed to have vanished from the world. With my heart thumping in my chest, I hovered over her profile. I then selected unfollow. It was as if someone had carved a hole right through my heart. My parents were the toughest to cut. I kept expecting a text, an apology, or even a flimsy justification about life getting in the way. However, nothing appeared. Weeks went by. With panic tearing at my chest, I began to wake up in the middle of the night and desperately check my phone because I was certain I had missed their message. However, the screen was always blank when I unlocked it. Jacob saw the bags under my eyes and the shaking of my hands when I thought no one was watching. "You're still waiting for them." There was no question. He could look right through me and I detested it. I don't understand. I was looking for an explanation. I wanted to hear them say it aloud, even if that reason broke me. "You are insufficient." You weren't. However, the reality is, you will never get the closure you deserve from certain individuals. One chilly November afternoon saw the last cut. I was holding the final letter I would ever send them, an invitation to our first Thanksgiving in our new apartment. As I stood in front of the mailbox, I had to be the one to let it go, even though Jacob offered to mail it for me. I carefully pressed the stamp down and sealed the envelope. I then slid it through the slot at the closest post office after walking 2 blocks there. I checked the mail daily for 3 weeks. Nothing. I prepared a turkey for 2 people on Thanksgiving morning. In an attempt to make the empty chairs seem less like ghosts, I arranged the table with linen napkins and mismatched plates. I spent the whole night with my phone facing down. I knew by the time dessert arrived, they would never arrive. The following morning, I erased all of my contacts, all the numbers, each and every email. Every tie connected me to those who had made me feel insignificant throughout my entire existence. The scissors trembled in my grasp. Nevertheless, I clipped the threads. It takes time to experience grief. It silently creeps in while you're brushing your teeth, pouring coffee, or doing laundry. On certain nights, I would wake up with a start and reach for my phone before I could stop myself, half thinking I had severed the cables too quickly or made some other horrible mistake. However, the more time that passed in stillness, the more light I began to feel. I stopped squirming when my phone buzzed by Christmas. The first stopped following them on social media by January. By February, I had stopped feeling the need to apologize to anyone for smiling. When Jacob first discovered me humming as I was preparing supper, he simply stood in the doorway and observed me with this cautious, gentle smile, as if he was worried that a single mistake might ruin the moment. "You're happy," I blinked, seeing that he was correct. "I think I might be." They fail to mention that leaving your family might seem like death. Every iteration of yourself that ever pleaded for their affection is buried. Additionally, you have to start from scratch and create something new in the empty area they leave behind. Something Grandma Martha used to tell me as a child, when Ashley's laughter filled the house and I was only a shadow in the corner, took me 42 years to fully grasp. Not everyone who loves you knows how to show it. I used to hold on to those words as though they were a promise. I now know what she was truly attempting to convey to me. Love is insufficient. Kindness without love is like a cage. A wound that never heals is love without respect. I waited my entire life for my family to love me in a way that they could never. Instead, I'm learning to love who I am. The silence was the first thing I noticed about living without them. It wasn't the oppressive, weighty sort that used to encircle me at night, replaying every hurtful word Ashley had ever spoken to me or waiting for a phone call that never materialized. This silence felt tidy. I could hear my own thoughts for the first time in my life, without their voices filling in all the blanks. I felt as though I was learning how to be a complete person without their shadows hanging over me throughout those first few months as I pieced myself back together. I quit wearing blue and beige, which I had picked because Mom constantly insisted they were appropriate. I began filling my closet with emerald greens and burnt oranges, and I dyed my hair a gentle copper red. I repainted the apartment, using muted gold and warm terracotta to replace the white walls. After decades of courteous compliance, every small alteration felt like removing a new layer of the girl. I hardly recognized myself in the mirror by spring. I never would have dared to go to therapy previously, but I started doing it on Tuesday mornings. One of the things our family never discussed when I was growing up was therapy. Unless it was to make fun of others for having to use it, Dad would say. We handle things on our own, while Mom nodded as he sipped whiskey in his leather armchair. However, I had handled things throughout my life, bearing their burden without ever seeking assistance. I was now being taught how to put it down. Talking about the Disneyland trip, the math trophies no one ever applauded for, and how Ashley had sliced my skull open when we were teenagers, and Dad made me apologize to her for getting blood on the carpet made. The first few sessions seemed like ripping glass shards out of my own flesh. My counselor doctor, with gentle eyes and a notebook perched on her knee, Reyes sat across from me. What would you say to that little girl if she were sitting here now? I gazed at the ground until I could no longer speak. I'm so sorry no one ever fought for you. The tears eventually arrived at that point. Jacob never inquired about the topics I covered during those sessions. When I got home, he simply kissed my forehead and left small notes in my wallet. You have my admiration. You are worthy of occupying space. You are sufficient at all times. I never wept more for my own family than I did each time I read those notes. Learning how to grieve for those who were still alive was the most difficult aspect. I continued to wait for the melancholy to end. However, grief seems to remain where love ought to have been. I lamented the absence of my parents. I was grieving for the sister I had pursued my entire life. Every version of myself that had shrunk to fit into their reality was mourned. I would sometimes wake up feeling empty, as if the entire universe had swung sideways and I was the only one still standing. However, I remained upright. My business began to flourish by the summer. I transformed the small online store into Willow and Hearth, a full-fledged company that sells woven baskets, ceramic mugs, and tablecloths made of linen. I labored into the night, manually filling orders and handwriting a thank you message on each box. People began giving my products 5-star ratings, describing them as timeless and warm, created with affection. I was constructing a life for myself, and each sale seemed like a brick that they would never be able to touch. I was replenishing stock one afternoon when a fresh order appeared on my laptop. I froze when I saw the name. Carter, Dolores, the name of my mother. My pulse pounded against my ribs as I gazed at the screen until the letters became blurry. She had located me, some tiny, perverse attempt to remind me that she was still keeping an eye on me. The cancel order button was lingered over by me. Then, though, something changed within me. That evening, I carefully and gently packed the package myself, sandwiching the linen napkins between tissue paper sheets. I tucked one of my thank you cards in at the very top. Her name was not written by me. Mine was not signed by me. There were only 4 words written in black ink. Not everyone is given another chance. Without checking to see if she had posted a review, I delivered it the following morning. By October, I had stopped feeling the need to apologize to anyone for smiling. On cool October mornings, I strolled across Central Park for a long time, allowing the leaves to crunch beneath my boots. I impulsively signed up for a pottery class and spent Sunday afternoons using my bare hands to shape clay, something Ashley would have laughed at if she had ever taken the time to get to know me. One evening, when Jacob got home, I was dancing barefoot in the kitchen with flour on my face and an old jazz record playing over the speakers. He simply stood in the doorway, grinning cautiously as he observed me. "I like this version of you," panicked. The first spun toward him. "Me too. One no longer follow them on social media. I don't relive past exchanges in my mind, searching for the one line that would have changed their feelings for me. You will never receive the appropriate apologies from certain folks. If nothing else, you must find a way to forgive them in order to release yourself." Ashley just sent me one text message on my birthday, which was the only time she ever made an effort to get in touch. "Hope you're well." I spent a lot of time staring at the screen. I then removed it. Breadcrumbs don't hold any promise. They made up their minds. I'm building mine now. I am not the moon circling the sun of another person. The entire dang sky is me. The final things binding me to my family had fallen apart. By the time winter arrived, I stopped looking at my phone when I woke up. Even though Ashley would never acknowledge it, I didn't cringe whenever a notification chimed or go through her social media accounts late at night, looking for evidence that she had missed me. No apology was forthcoming. No accounting. Nothing but the quiet they always left behind. I spent my entire life anticipating their selection. Instead, I was finally learning how to make my own decisions. By Christmas, business was flourishing. With orders coming in more quickly than I could fill them, Willow and Hearth had outgrown my small flat. I leased a little studio apartment 2 blocks from our home, a bright corner loft with large windows that let in the entire sky and exposed brick walls. To assist with order packing, I employed 2 part-time helpers. I have agreements with 3 local vendors. My hands hurt when I went to bed at night after working 12-hour days. I was bone-tired but felt alive in a way I had never experienced before. I burst out laughing the first time I was referred to as an entrepreneur. Me, the girl who is invisible, the contingency plan. They were too preoccupied with underestimating me to realize that I had created something out of nothing. I was drinking coffee in front of the studio window in February, watching the snow fall on the city below, when Ashley's first message arrived. "Hey, heard about the business. Congrats." As simple as that. Don't apologize. No recognition for all that they had done to me. 5 words that made it seem as though she could waltz back into my life now that I had something to be envious of. I felt the old ache in my chest increase as I gazed at the television for a long time. I could hear her voice from all those years ago, beautiful and cutting all at once, for one terrible second. "You think you're better than everyone just because you're smart?" A dozen alternative responses were typed out by me. After that, I removed them all. I ended up writing 2 words, Hope you're well. Before she could respond, I blocked her number. I didn't talk to Ashley again after that. When you're grieving for living individuals, grief can be peculiar. It comes in waves, each one getting smaller until you realize the ocean has finally calmed down. I tried to get a place at their table for so many years. I never once thought I could construct my own. Willow and Hearth has its own storefront by spring. The morning we hung the sign, Jacob and I stood on the sidewalk, the weight of everything I had achieved pressing down on my chest as I ran my fingers over the gold writing. His breath was warm against my hair as he kissed the top of my head. Do you think they'd be proud of you? My father's quiet, my mother's icy smile, and Ashley's piercing little chuckle were all things I considered for a long time. I don't think it matters anymore. I thought that retaliation would taste better than forgiveness, as if I might finally feel satisfied after consuming all of the resentment they had left in me. However, beneath that sign standing there, I only felt liberated. This version of myself, the lady who blossomed without their sunlight, would never be seen by them. And perhaps that was the best form of retaliation ever. I began writing my entire name on goods labels by the summer. Carter, Emily. No initials. Don't hide. I made my identity clear to the world. I still occasionally catch myself looking at the phone, a tiny, shattered piece of me waiting for their names to appear on the screen. However, the pain is no longer sharp. It's simply far away. Like something I used to carry but eventually figured out how to let down. Not everyone is able to select their own family. However, it is up to each individual to decide when to leave. I turned to leave. From the wreckage they left behind, I created a life. And if they ever search the shadows for me once more, this time, they'll have to look up. For I am not the moon circling the sun of someone else. The entire dang sky is me,